Very nice. Nice to meet you.
Beautiful. I always love seeing you in person. Yeah. Well, so I tend to be free Mondays and Wednesdays and that fits how it fits with stuff. But one wild card for right now
The department was started by student activism. There was a young lady by the name of Ada Fisher. Now she's Dr. Ada Fisher. She had attended a forum in the 1960s, and the forum was really about what was going to be the new stance that Black people were going to take after the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So Ada Fisher and a group of students decided they were going to get together and they were going to kind of speak out on some of the issues. And so that fight, what Ada Fisher and many other of her colleagues did with the Neo-Black Society, would, over time, would develop what we now know as the African American and African Diaspora Studies program, which in 2002 became an official major for students to get their bachelor's degree in. Dr. Woods was the program director, and of course Dr. Woods and Michael Carlton had spent over 3 decades trying to provide an opportunity for students to not only study African American studies in different departments like history and sociology, but to see it as an actual independent discipline that requires academic rigor.
So AADS tends to be a major of discovery. Most students coming off of high school don't necessarily know that this is a potential major that they can have, that they can explore. And it's a very interdisciplinary major because we look at cultural aspects. We think about how religious identities develop in different geographies. We think about how music and different cultural productions are also taking place.
This is a holistic experience. You're gonna learn some good stuff and some bad stuff, but it's gonna be an all-encompassing experience nonetheless.
American history is African American history. So that's how I would approach it. What we do is give you a more complete understanding of the African American experience.
The name has changed over the years a little bit, and recently, as of 2014, 2015, we've adopted African American and African Diaspora Studies, which indicates a larger, a more global perspective in terms of what we cover.
The ADS program has been incredibly supportive of the variety of classes that I've designed, and I've been really happy about that. Designing the politics of Black poetry and rap was really important to me, and so being able to try to get the students to kind of understand and unpack what are all the political messages and images that are being funneled through these cultural products that we really love and sometimes don't even really think about, well, what's there, what's underneath it, how do we understand it?
I've given this program more than 30 years of my life, so I've seen it go through a lot of changes, a lot of struggles, and a lot of great moments where we have just become like a force on this campus. And again, I'm just happy I was part of that.
Right, so there's an intervention, I think, a labor of love that our faculty members have. We have a celebrated professor who has a title in France, Dr. Omar Ali. We have someone who has been the chair of the American Philosophical Society. We have just a variety of people with tremendous accomplishments. And together, that's what creates our small but mighty force as a program.
It is within this framework of remembrance and homage that we gather here today to not only remember the names Dr. Frank Woods and Lorenzo Logie Meachum, but to name space. Moreover, these spaces ensure that it will be more than only the children or direct students of these two beloved brothers that shall remember their names and contributions, but those who, in the many years to come, who will accept the charge of immersing themselves in this discipline at this institution will have these spaces as landmarks to commemorate the lives and labor of Dr. Frank Woods and Logie Meachum.
Black studies on campuses tend to be underfunded, under-resourced. And so people who are part of Black studies programs tend to be very dedicated to trying to uncover, teach, explore, share the history, cultures, literatures of Africa and people of African descent.
This program is very small and very intimate. So when a student takes a class with us and the student has an opportunity to visit one of the professors, I think because the department is so small, and usually when you take classes with the African American Studies department, you're going to be seeing the same professors, so the student has more time to engage with the professor a little bit more than they would with more larger departments. So I think that creates more of a closer relationship between faculty and students. That's what it was like for me.
The professors are nice and welcoming, and you can ask questions whenever you have them. They're always very informative. It's never a bother to learn more information. And just the style of teaching that I've received from them has been different than any other style that I've had in my life. They really do a good job with bringing you the information, making sure it's in your mind so that you know about it, but also directing that information to a class conversation or a one-on-one conversation.
Dr. Woods, I actually did take 2 classes with him because I took African American art history and African American music. And it was just, I mean, you know, with him you can tell he was very passionate about the things that he was teaching. And that really made you engage. Like, I was never once bored in that class, and I was also participating because I wanted to. You know, and it was just, I mean, it was just really nice.
So I'm only in one so far. It's African Diaspora with Omar Ali. The way he teaches is like he's telling a story, and you can kind of see that in the books he writes. You're just following a story. So it's very easy to listen to. It's not complicated. It's not really something that's too much of a challenge to follow along with, especially because he says, like, you are welcome to interrupt me at any point.
I think that AADS provides a space where not just Black students, but other students can begin to explore a history that is not taught in the ways that I think we're beginning to realize should be taught. That is, to be inclusive of poor people, people on the margins that have created the world that we're in.
Yeah, I used to tell my students that think of us as a family and that our doors are always open, and you just don't have to come and talk about school-related stuff. If you have problems, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to solve those problems.
You know, community engagement is what helps translate knowledge to many sources and to many people. You know, when you think of knowledge as an elite thing, it's almost like an unmoving mountain. But when you think of knowledge in the hands of people who can wield it, who have agency through it, who have voices that they can raise and use in a variety of circumstances, whether it's educational or political or artistic, I think community engagement is the way that we make that happen.
Of course, our greatest way of interfacing with the community is through our CASE conference on African American Culture and Experience. And We have, over the years, had great community participation, not just in coming to what our talks, but actually leading some of the sessions, being the speakers of some of the sessions.
My lecture was about protecting African American studies programs, recognizing they're under assault, recognizing how the conversation is always about race but never about whiteness. So it's really difficult to get people. We went straight to the BSU and said, we need you all to help us stay here, right? We need people to take these classes. And that doesn't mean it has to be you, but help spread the word. We need to value knowing our own story the way we understand other stories that are not our own. That's what it was about.
We used to have some really big names that would come on campus and give us the keynote address, like Bell Hooks and Michael Eric Dyson, Cornel West. And those were special times. I actually got to meet some of my heroes, hang out with them for a little while.
The naming of these spaces is important, not just as a symbolic gesture, but as a meaningful gesture to the people who are going to be here right now and in the future. It's still here. We are in one of the only disciplines where you can look down at the book and then look up at the real world and see all of it happening in real time. We must never forget that. And the naming of these spaces is dedication to that, just as much as it is to the people who it is being named after.
Honored to say a few things about Dr. Frank Woods, who hired me to teach in African American Studies more than a quarter of a century ago. Since then, he's become a great supervisor, mentor, role model, and a wonderful friend.
Logie was a blues player, yes. He was a professor at the African American and African Diaspora Studies program. He was so much to us. But to see him in action.
It's easy to think of Lorenzo Meachum as a kind of Renaissance man. There was almost nothing he couldn't do, almost nowhere he had not been, and very few people he didn't know. Apart from being the best good time one could have this side of the law, he was a scholar, a writer, a farmer, who turned me on to farming, an equestrian, a mechanic, an adventurer, a world traveler, a mama's boy, and a potential friend to everyone he met.
Dr. Woods, I want to thank you for being my instructor. I want to thank so many things in my life for allowing me to be in a space with you, for being my instructor. You did what Dr. Eddie Glaude and Dr. Cornel West call having a radical imagination, because that's what it requires for you to have in order to make some shifts in this country.
Better is the one day in your woods, better is the one day in your house.
And one of the things I want to say about Frankie is about his diligence and willingness to grow. When he came here, he had an MFA, and an MFA, a Master's of Fine Arts, is a terminal degree. It's not like a regular master's in literature or something. And it means you went to study your technique, that sort of thing. So when he came here, he was an MFA. And then he began to chaired a program and brought it into the state of being a program. And because he didn't have a PhD, they said he couldn't be the chair. He went back to school and got a PhD.
Frank Woods, Dr. Frank Woods has written a number of textbooks that he needed to write to teach the material he wanted to teach in his courses. Those textbooks are still in print, right?
It's a lot of power in the name. It's a lot of power in the name. He would call me Ishmael, Mel, Brother Issa. Call Dr. Frank, Bro Frank, Bro Woods. there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power in a name. Being present here today to witness and be present more than anything, being present to witness this ceremony and honoring of my father and Dr. Frank. It's an honor to me. It's an honor to my family. It's an honor to my ancestors. They say that people die, right? We leave our earthly presence. But they also say that people live as long as there's life spoken over their name.
I always knew Logie because his cousin, his first cousin, was a girl I grew up with. It was one of my best friends. But we got to be ace boon coons when we were in graduate school at A&T. And he really connected with people. And his main thing was you got to take people out of their comfort zone. Once he started going all over the world, because he'd say he was just a little country boy from Guilford County, right? That he realized how life affirming and changing it is, and how you see yourself in a completely different context. And he wanted everybody to travel, so everywhere he went, that was his mantra. You know, we got to get these babies on a bus somewhere and take them somewhere.
So when I moved to Greensboro from the Northeast, and you have to imagine this, right? Young white woman with a PhD in Black Studies gets hired to teach at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And one of the first people I meet is Logie Meachum. And we have this wonderful conversation about James Weldon Johnson. And for me, that was part of a process of learning about and listening to, deeply listening to, people of the Greensboro community. So Logie and Frank and Dr. Deborah Barnes are all Greensboro natives. They're all individuals who are pursuing education, higher education, at a moment where that is not only not expected, but sometimes exceedingly challenging for Black people to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, Logie was one of my best friends. I'm the one that hired Logie because through our relationship, I just was overwhelmed by the knowledge that he had and the way he delivered that knowledge. And I told Logie, man, you just got to come on board and share that knowledge with our students. So, you know, we were friends first, the same age, grew up in Greensboro.
I would say that Frank and Logie is no longer with us, but they are two peas in a pod.
And sometimes when you're dealing with a master teacher like Logie, they don't really tell you what the lesson is. They let you figure it out. And those are some of the best learning moments in the world. And he was teaching me how to grow food on red soil clay. If you don't know anything about red soil clay, some of the hardest clay, or some of the hardest soil that you can actually grow food with. So I asked him one day, I said, why does it make us do that? Right? Knowing that it's going to be nearly impossible for us to grow food with this type of soil. And he would say anything. He just left it up for my interpretation. And what I realized is that he made me go through that because that's what it means to be an African American or a Black person in America. You're a seed that has to be grown through red clay.
This means a lot to me and my family. I know it means a lot to Logie and his family. I'd like to thank Dr. Morissette and Dr. Collins for sharing in this dream to honor Logie's memory. It's kind of hard for me.
Take your time.
I would also like to thank Logie's family for sharing him with us, because we are all better people just for knowing him. Logie, we miss you. We love you. We celebrate your life and legacy, and we will never forget you.
Gotta get on board. Me and all my friends, we've been playing these old blues. Been around a long time, Lord, I've really paid my dues.
3 words that describe the program:
Black.
Transformative.
So transformational.
Meaningful.
Student-focused.
Underrated.
Flexible.
Important.
Resilient.
Developmental.
Paradigm shifting.
Vibrant.
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 Progressive.
Interesting.
Committed.
Educational.
Expanding.
Inspiration.
Interdisciplinary.
Exciting.
Potential.
And nurturing.
Essential to the truth. If you are aware of what's going on in Florida now and how they are devaluing African American culture and history, somebody has to continue to tell the truth. I mean, they're actually banning books that contain this knowledge that we're trying to promote. So I'm glad that I'm a part of this, have been a part of it, and we have to continue to be advocates of honoring our ancestors. I mean, there was a time at UNCG when African Americans couldn't even set foot on this campus. And to have something like this legacy is very important. So yeah, essential to the truth, and it needs to be a continued mission statement for us. We're essential to the truth, particularly in these times.
Gotta get on, people get on board.